A brilliant lawyer at Wilkins Law, she was known for her sharp mind and her even sharper privacy. She lived for the law, finding solace in the black and white clarity of statutes and precedents. But her personal life was a gray area, a tangled web of a recent breakup with her colleague, Jamie, and the overbearing expectations of her wealthy parents. As she walked the familiar route home, the fog began to thicken. She felt a prickle at the back of her neck, that instinctual alarm that humans have spent centuries trying to ignore. She quickened her pace, her heels clicking rhythmically on the damp pavement. A van idled at the curb, its engine a low, guttural growl. Before she could scream, a hand gloved and cold was over her mouth. She fought, her fingernails clawing at her abductor's arms, but the darkness claimed her before she could break free. Across the street, hidden behind a low stone wall, a pair of wide, intelligent eyes watched. Brian, a 12-year-old, with the world locked inside his head, gripped his colored pencils until his knuckles turned white. He didn't understand the violence, but he saw the colors of it. The jagged red of fear, the deep, suffocating black of the van. By the time the sun began to peek through the mist, Megan was gone, and Brian was lost in the labyrinth of his own mind. Chapter 2. Fragile Connections. The call came into the station at 0700. Mark Hudson was already on his second coffee when Sarah Trong walked into the bullpen. Sarah, the lead forensic scientist, moved with a grace that always seemed at odds with the grim nature of her work. Today, her eyes were shadowed with concern. "We have a double report, Mark," she said, leaning against his desk. The scent of her jasmine tea mingled with the aroma of his coffee, a familiar, comforting blend. A missing persons report for Megan Schaefer, and a call from Emma Jansen. Her son, Brian, went missing from their yard this morning. Mark stood up, Rex immediately rising to his side. "Two missing in the same neighborhood? That's not a coincidence." "It gets worse," Sarah added, her voice dropping. "Brian's mother found a drawing on the sidewalk. He does these incredibly detailed sketches from memory. It looks like, well, it looks like a kidnapping." They drove to the Janssen residence in silence. Mark's mind was already racing, cataloging suspects. Jamie, the ex-boyfriend. The developers. Megan was investigating. The list was long, and the clock was ticking. When they arrived, Emma Jansen was a ghost of a woman, trembling as she held one of Brian's drawings. Rex went to her instinctively, resting his head on her knee. Mark watched as the woman's hand found the dog's fur, her breathing finally slowing. "He sees things," Emma whispered. "Brian sees things we don't. If he saw that woman being taken, he's terrified. He's out there somewhere, hiding. We'll find him, Emma," Mark promised, and for a moment his eyes met Sarah's. There was a shared understanding there, a vow that went beyond the badge. They were in this together. Chapter 3. The Silent Witness. Finding a child in a city like Street John's is like looking for a single spark in a lightning storm. But Mark had Rex. They tracked Brian to an old construction site near the docks. The boy was huddled behind a stack of rusted rebar, his eyes fixed on nothing. When Mark approached, the boy flinched, a low moan escaping his lips. "Easy, Brian. It's okay," Mark said softly, keeping his distance. Rex, however, didn't hesitate. He trotted forward with a gentle wag of his tail, carrying a tennis ball he'd scavenged from the back of the SUV. He didn't bark. He just sat, waiting. Slowly, Brian's eyes focused. He looked at the dog. A tiny flickering smile touched his lips. He reached out, his small hand bearing into Rex's golden brown coat. "He's the key, Sarah," Mark said, watching from a few feet away. He saw the face. He saw the van. But Brian wouldn't speak. He couldn't. Back at the precinct, the atmosphere was electric. A ransom note had arrived, $2 million. The kidnapper was professional, using burner apps and encrypted sites. The pressure was mounting from the Schaefer family, who viewed their daughter as an asset to be recovered rather than a human being in pain. Sarah spent hours with Brian in a quiet room, Rex lying at the boy's feet. She didn't push him. She just gave him paper and pencils. Can you show us what you saw, Brian? She asked, her voice like silk. Can you help us find Megan? Brian's hand began to move. He didn't draw like a child. He drew with the precision of a camera. Line by line, a face emerged. It wasn't Jamie. It was someone older, harder, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow and eyes that held no light. Earl Blackburn, Mark muttered, looking over Sarah's shoulder. The proximity was intoxicating, the heat of her body, the faint scent of her perfume. He cleared his throat, refocusing on the drawing. Blackburn is a career criminal, a professional muscle for hire. If he has Megan, he's not working alone. He doesn't have the brains for an escrow scam. So who's the architect? Sarah asked, looking up at him. Someone who knows the law, Mark replied. Someone who knew Megan's schedule, someone she trusted. Chapter 4. Blood on the tracks. The investigation took a grisly turn when the van was located. It was found abandoned in a commercial laundry parking lot on Drovers Road. Mark and Rex were the first on the scene, Sarah right behind them with her forensic kit. Rex circled the vehicle, his body stiffening. He let out a sharp, mournful bark. What is it, pal? Mark asked, his hand hovering over his sidearm. Sarah opened the rear doors. The interior was a nightmare of clinical efficiency, but there was one thing the cleaners had missed. In the corner, beneath a floor mat, was a pool of blood. Too much for a struggle, Sarah whispered, taking a swab. This is a kill site. Mark felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. Jamie, we'll know soon, she replied. The results came back within the hour. The blood belonged to Jamie Bregman. The ex-boyfriend wasn't the kidnapper. He was the first casualty. He had stumbled upon the truth that someone at the firm was stealing millions from escrow accounts, and he had paid the ultimate price. Mark stood in the middle of the bullpen, the digital map of the city glowing behind him. Todd, he said, the name tasting like ash. Todd Wilkins. The partner. He's been using Blackburn to do his dirty work. He kidnapped Megan to frame Jamie, and then he killed Jamie to tie up the loose ends. It's a perfect plan, Sarah said, her face pale. Except for one thing, Brian. Mark finished. The boy who saw the face. Chapter 5. The Rescue at the Golds. The final showdown took place at an abandoned machine shop in a desolate area known as the Golds. The wind howled through the cracked windows, sounding like the ghosts of the city's industrial past. Mark moved through the shadows, Rex a silent ghost at his side. He could hear voices, Todd's panicked whining and Blackburn's low, menacing growl. The money's gone, Todd. The kid grabbed the bag. Blackburn hissed. We have to kill her and get out of here, Todd cried. If the police find her, the police are already here, Mark shouted, stepping into the light, his service weapon leveled. Blackburn reacted with the speed of a predator, swinging a heavy iron pipe. Rex leaped, a blur of fur and teeth, intercepting the blow. The dog went down with a whimper, and Mark felt a surge of white-hot rage that nearly blinded him. He tackled Blackburn, the two men crashing into a pile of rusted scrap metal. It was a brutal, ugly fight, the kind of fight that happens when justice is personal. Mark rained blows down on the criminal, the frustration of the last 48 hours fueling every strike. Across the room, Todd tried to bolt, but a wounded Rex blocked the door, a low, terrifying snarl vibrating in his chest. Todd collapsed to his knees, his cowardice finally catching up to him. Mark handcuffed Blackburn and rushed to the back room. He found Megan tied to a chair, her eyes wide with terror, but alive. It's okay, Megan. You're safe, he whispered, cutting her bonds. As the sirens began to wail in the distance, Mark knelt beside Rex. The dog was limping, a gash on his shoulder, but he licked Mark's hand, his eyes bright. Sarah arrived minutes later, rushing past the uniformed officers. She didn't go to the victim first. She went to Mark. She grabbed his arm, her eyes searching his face for injuries. Are you okay? She asked, her voice trembling. Mark looked at her, the adrenaline fading, replaced by a profound sense of clarity. He reached out, his hand lingering on hers, for a second longer than necessary. We're okay, Sarah. We're okay. Chapter 6. the distillery's legacy. Justice